The full moon hung low over Oakland, its silver light slicing through the hospital window, casting a ghostly glow across the sterile tiles of Highland Hospital's ICU. The air was heavy with the sharp bite of antiseptic undercut by the faint hum of monitors and the distant wail of a siren fading into the night. Outside the Bay Area pulsed with life, graffiti splashed across brick walls, neon signs buzzing above corner taquerias. The salty tang of the bay carried on a restless breeze, but inside time seemed to freeze, and Grayson Cole felt like he was falling apart. He stood in the doorway, his tailored suit crumpled from a red-eye flight from Boston, his dark hair a mess, his jaw shadowed with stubble. At 38, Grayson was a titan, CEO of Apex Innovations, the AI empire that had reshaped tech, his name a fixture in Forbes and Wired. But tonight, he wasn't the man who closed billion-dollar deals or commanded boardrooms. He was just a son, his heart pounding with dread. Vivian Cole, 62, lay motionless in the hospital bed, her face ashen, her chest rising and falling under a tangle of tubes. A heart attack, the doctors had said. Critical condition. The words clawed at him, hollow and relentless. Then he saw her, Jasmine Carter, the night shift nurse moving with a quiet precision that seemed to hold the chaos at bay. Her dark skin shimmered under the harsh fluorescent lights, her curls pulled back in a tight bun, her brown eyes sharp with focus as she checked Vivian's vitals. She didn't notice Grayson at first, her hands steady as she adjusted an IV drip, her voice low as she murmured to the unconscious woman, "Come on, Ms. Vivian, you're stronger than this. Let's get you through the night." Grayson's breath caught. There was something about her beyond the faded blue scrubs, beyond the clinical efficiency. It was the way she spoke to his mother like she was more than a chart number, like she was family. He cleared his throat and Jasmine's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto his. "Are you family?" she asked, her voice calm, but authoritative. No hint of deference despite the disheveled man in the $1,000 suit standing before her. He nodded, his throat tight. Her son, Grayson Cole. She studied him for a moment, then nodded back. No flicker of recognition at his name, no bowing to his wealth. Just compassion, raw and unfiltered. "Your mother's heart is struggling," she said, her tone clear, not condescending. "We're stabilizing her, but the next few hours are critical." Grayson exhaled her words, grounding him like an anchor in a storm. The doctors had bombarded him with jargon, arrhythmia, catheterization, but Jasmine's clarity cut through the fog. He sank into a chair by the bed, watching her work. She moved like she was born for this, checking monitors, adjusting pillows to ease Vivian's breathing, even moistening her dry lips with a tenderness that made Grayson's chest ache. At one point, she caught his eye and offered a small, reassuring smile. "Talk to her. It helps." He tried his voice hoarse as he whispered to his mother about her rose garden in Boston, about their old Cape Cod summers, about anything to keep her here, but his eyes kept drifting to Jasmine, her presence a quiet lighthouse in the dark. At 3 a.m., the monitor erupted in a shrill alarm, red lights flashing. Grayson froze, his heart slamming against his ribs, but Jasmine was already in motion, her hands a blur as she checked the leads, her voice sharp as she called for a doctor. "Mr. Cole, step outside," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. He wasn't used to orders. Nobody told the CEO of Apex Innovations what to do, but something in her voice, steady and unyielding, made him obey. He stumbled into the waiting room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of burnt coffee and old magazines choking the air. 20 minutes later, Jasmine found him, her scrubs slightly rumpled, her face calm but etched with fatigue. "She's stable," she said, sitting across from him, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. "If we hadn't caught it when we did." She trailed off, her eyes saying what her words didn't. "She's not out of the woods, but she's got a fighting chance." Grayson's shoulders sagged, relief flooding him like a tidal wave. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling small, inadequate. "I don't know how to—" "Don't," she cut him off, her voice soft but firm. "It's my job, Mr. Cole, Grayson," he corrected, meeting her gaze, his voice quieter than he meant. "Please," she hesitated, then nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Grayson. The way she said his name, low, deliberate, sent a jolt through him like a spark igniting something he hadn't felt in years. Under the cold hospital lights, with the moon still watching through the window, he knew this moment was the start of something he couldn't yet name. Over the next week, as Vivian's condition slowly improved, Grayson found himself lingering at the hospital during Jasmine's shifts. He told himself it was for his mother. But the truth was in the way his eyes searched for her, the way his pulse quickened when she walked into the room. He tried to thank her properly, offering a check for the hospital, a Caribbean getaway, even a scholarship in her name. Each was met with the same gentle rejection, her smile polite but unyielding, her brown eyes flashing with a mix of amusement and resolve. "I'm just doing my job, Grayson," she said one night, her hands busy charting at the nurse's station, the faint glow of a computer screen illuminating her face. "You don't owe me anything." He leaned against the counter, the fluorescent lights casting long shadows across his jaw. "You saved my mother's life." "That's not nothing." She glanced up, her gaze searching his unflinching. "I save lives every night. It's what I do. Buy me a coffee if you want to say thanks." He grinned, a rare boyish smile that felt foreign on his lips. Deal. The next evening he showed up with 2 cups from Mama's Soul Shack, a West Oakland gem he'd found after a quick search, its weathered sign promising food for the soul. The place was alive with the thump of Aretha Franklin's voice, the smell of cornbread and collard greens wrapping around them like a warm blanket. He handed her a cup black with 1 sugar, just the way he'd noticed she took it. "You pay attention, don't you?" she said, accepting the cup with a small smile, her fingers brushing his for a fleeting moment. The contact was electric, a spark that made his skin hum, and he wondered if she felt it too. They sat in the hospital break room, the hum of a vending machine, the only sound besides their voices. Jasmine told him about growing up in Oakland, about her grandmother Ruth, a blues singer who'd lit up clubs in the 70s, about her dream of becoming a nurse practitioner to serve her community. Grayson shared fragments of his own story, his mother's 3 jobs to get him through MIT, his dropout days to build Apex, the weight of a world that expected him to be untouchable. "You don't seem like the tech bro type," she said, sipping her coffee, her eyes teasing. "No sneakers, no kombucha obsession." He laughed, the sound rough and unguarded. "I'm more of a whiskey and late nights guy. What about you? What's a nurse like you doing working nights in Oakland?" "Paying for school," she said, her voice matter-of-fact. "And it's home. These people," she gestured toward the hospital halls, "they're my people, I get them." He nodded, something shifting inside him. For the first time in years, he felt seen not as Grayson Cole, the billionaire, but as a man raw and real under her steady gaze. When Vivian was discharged, Grayson's excuse to linger at the hospital vanished, but he couldn't let go. He found himself driving his sleek black Tesla through Oakland's streets, the city's pulse a stark contrast to Boston's polished charm, the graffiti-covered walls, the neon signs buzzing above taco trucks, the laughter spilling from corner bars. It was alive, messy, real in a way. His world of private jets and penthouses never was. He parked outside Mama's Soul Shack, the same spot where he'd bought the coffee, and spotted Jasmine through the window, laughing with the owner, her curls loose for the first time, catching the light like a crown. He walked in the bell above the door, jingling, and her eyes widened in surprise. "Grayson, what are you doing here?" "Checking on my investment," he said, nodding toward the coffee cup in her hand, his voice teasing. "How's it treating you?" She rolled her eyes, but her smile was warm, lighting up the room. It's coffee, not a stock portfolio. You lost her something? Nah, he said, stepping closer, the smell of cornbread and her faint jasmine perfume wrapping around them. Just thought you might want to grab a real dinner. You know, as a proper thank you. Her co-workers at the counter exchanged glances, their grins poorly hidden, and Jasmine raised an eyebrow. I don't do fancy, Grayson. You sure you can handle a place like this? Try me, he said, his voice low, a challenge and a promise that sent a shiver through her. They ended up at the Crab Shack in Jack London Square, a waterfront dive with weathered wooden tables and the tangy scent of seafood hanging in the air. The bay stretched out before them, its dark water shimmering under the full moon. The distant hum of a ferry cutting through the night. Jasmine wore a simple black dress, her curls framing her face, and Grayson couldn't take his eyes off her. They shared a plate of crab legs, their fingers slick with butter, their laughter easy as they traded stories. You ever crack a crab before? She asked, her eyes glinting as she split a claw with practiced ease, the snap of shell sharp in the air. First time, he admitted, fumbling with his own, a rare moment of vulnerability that made her smile. I'm more of a steak guy. Figures, she said, leaning over to show him how her hand brushing his. The touch was electric, and he caught the faintest hitch in her breath, a sign she felt it too. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront, the moon casting a silver path across the water, the air cool with the salty bite of the bay. The distant strum of a busker's guitar floated on the breeze, a soulful melody that seemed to weave around them. Grayson stopped, turning to face her, his heart pounding in a way no boardroom ever caused Jasmine. He said, his voice rough with something he couldn't name. I don't know what this is, but I know I don't want it to stop. Her eyes searched his, a mix of caution and something deeper, something that made his chest tighten. You're a long way from Boston. Grayson, you sure you know what you're getting into? No, he admitted, stepping closer, the space between them shrinking until he could feel the warmth of her body. But I want to find out. The kiss was sudden, inevitable, like the tide pulling them under. His lips found hers, warm and sweet, with the faint taste of crab and Sauvignon Blanc, and her hands slid up his chest, gripping his jacket as if anchoring herself to the moment. The moonlight bathed their skin in silver, the waves lapping against the pier, a soft counterpoint to their ragged breaths. His fingers traced the curve of her jaw, then slipped to her neck, feeling her pulse race under his touch. She pressed herself closer, her body soft and strong against his, her curves molding to him as if they were made for this. The guitar's notes wove through the air a sultry rhythm that matched the heat building between them, and for a moment the world fell away. Oakland, Boston, the hospital, all of it, leaving only the fire of her lips, the thud of his heart, the electric pull of something neither could deny. When they pulled apart, breathless, her eyes were dark, her lips swollen, and a smile tugged at her mouth. Your trouble. Grayson Cole, she said, her voice husky, a mix of amusement and warning, only the good kind. He shot back, his grin boyish, unguarded, his hand still resting lightly on her waist. She laughed, the sound bright against the night, but there was a flicker in her gaze, a hint of doubt, a shadow of the worlds that stood between them. As they walked back to her car, her hand brushing his, Grayson felt the weight of that shadow, but he pushed it aside. For now, under the Oakland moon, they were enough. If that moonlit kiss set your heart racing, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about a moment when love caught you by surprise. Don't miss what happens next in Jasmine and Grayson's story. It's a journey of passion, heartbreak, and redemption you won't want to miss. The south side of Chicago thrummed with a restless energy, its streets alive with the wail of a saxophone from a corner jazz club. the sizzle of deep-dish pizza from a nearby joint, and the sharp bite of wind rolling off Lake Michigan. Neon signs flickered above storefronts on 63rd Street, casting pink and blue hues across the cracked sidewalks. While the distant rumble of the L train echoed like the city's heartbeat, it was a world away from Oakland's soulful grit, and Jasmine Carter felt it in her bones as she stepped into the grand atrium of the Chicago Cultural Center, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The gala was a glittering affair, all crystal chandeliers and black tie elegance, the air heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and aged bourbon. Jasmine smoothed the front of her ruby-red gown, its silk hugging her curves, her curls swept up to reveal the graceful line of her neck. She'd spent hours preparing her grandmother Ruth's voice in her head. "Hold your head high, baby. You belong anywhere you choose to be." But as she moved through the crowd, the weight of 100 pairs of eyes pressed against her, their whispers sharp as glass. Grayson Cole stood beside her, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders, his dark hair tamed for once, his green eyes scanning the room with the ease of a man who owned it. At 38, he was in his element, CEO of Apex Innovations, a titan of tech shaking hands with investors and charming donors with a smile that could close deals or break hearts. But his hand rested lightly on the small of Jasmine's back, a quiet anchor that kept her grounded. "You okay?" he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. She nodded, forcing a smile. "Just not used to all this." "Sparkle, you're the brightest thing in here," he said, his voice low, and the sincerity in his eyes made her heart skip. For a moment, she believed him. But the moment shattered when a woman in a sleek black gown approached her, blonde hair swept into a flawless chignon. Her smile sharp as a blade. Lillian Harper, Grayson's ex-partner, and a Wall Street shark extended a manicured hand. "You must be Jasmine," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "Grayson's latest project." Jasmine's jaw tightened, but she shook Lillian's hand, her grip firm. "Jasmine Carter," she said, her tone cool, "and I'm nobody's project." Lillian's smile didn't falter, but her eyes gleamed with something predatory. "Of course not. But do enjoy the spotlight while it lasts." Grayson tends to tire of his diversions. Grayson's hand stiffened on Jasmine's back, his voice low and dangerous. "That's enough, Lillian." She raised a perfectly arched brow, undeterred, just offering friendly advice. "This world," she gestured to the glittering crowd, "it chews up outsiders." Jasmine held her gaze, her brown eyes fierce. "I'm not here for your world. I'm here for him." Lillian's laugh was a sharp, crystalline thing, and as she sauntered away, the whispers around them grew louder. "A nurse," one woman murmured to her companion, her voice laced with disdain. "She's stunning. But really, with Grayson Cole." Another man sipping scotch chuckled, "Give it a month. He'll move on to someone who fits." Jasmine's smile stayed in place, but inside her chest burned. She'd faced judgment before growing up. Black in Oakland, clawing her way through nursing school. But this was different. This was Grayson's world, and she felt like an intruder, every step a fight to prove she belonged, needing air. Jasmine slipped away from the gala, finding refuge in a jazz club in Bronzeville, its dim lights and smoky air a balm to her frayed nerves. The wail of a trumpet filled the space, the smell of whiskey and fried catfish lingering in the air. She spotted a familiar face at the bar, Darius Brooks, her childhood friend from Oakland, now a graffiti artist making waves in Chicago's art scene. His locks were pulled back, his leather jacket slung over a stool, his dark eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Jazz, what the hell you doing in Chicago looking like a queen?" he said, pulling her into a hug, his voice warm with the old Oakland slang. She laughed, the sound easing the knot in her chest. "Long story. What about you?" Still tagging walls always, he said, sliding a glass of bourbon her way. Heard you're running with some tech billionaire now. That true? She sighed, sipping the drink, the burn of it grounding her. It's complicated, Darius. He leaned back, studying her. Complicated's fine, but don't let his world swallow you. You're Oakland Jazz. You're Ruth's granddaughter. Don't forget who you are. His words hit hard, stirring the doubt she'd been pushing down since the gala. She thought of Grayson, the way his touch set her skin on fire, the way his laugh made her feel seen, but Lillian's words echoed too, and the whispers of the crowd. And now Darius all warning her of the same thing. She didn't belong. Grayson found her an hour later. His tie loosened his face, a mix of worry and frustration. The club was packed now, the trumpet giving way to a sultry saxophone, its notes weaving through the haze of cigarette smoke. He slid onto the stool beside her, his knee brushing hers, the contact sending a spark through her. Despite everything. You left, he said, his voice low, not accusing, but searching. What happened? She met his gaze, her eyes guarded. Your ex happened. Your friends happened. They look at me like I'm a novelty. Grayson, like I'm here until you get bored. His jaw tightened, anger flashing in his green eyes. Lillian's bitter, always has been, and those people. They don't matter. They do, she snapped, her voice rising over the music. Because that's your world, and I'm not sure I can live in it. I'm not sure I want to. He leaned closer, his hand resting on her knee, the warmth of his touch cutting through the cool night air. My world's wherever you are, Jasmine. I don't care about them. Her heart ached at his words, but doubt gnawed at her. You say that now, but what happens when the shine wears off? When they keep whispering, and I'm still just the nurse from Oakland? He didn't answer right away, his eyes searching hers, and the silence was louder than the saxophone. Then he stood, pulling her to her feet, his hand firm around hers. Come with me, she followed, unsure why, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as he led her to a quiet hallway behind the club. The music muffled the air, thick with the scent of old wood and whiskey. The neon glow from a nearby sign spilled through a window, bathing them in shades of pink and blue, and before she could speak, he backed her against the wall, his hands framing her face. You're not just anything, he said, his voice rough, raw. You're everything. The kiss was fierce, a collision of frustration and need, his lips claiming hers with a hunger that stole her breath. She tasted bourbon on his tongue, felt the heat of his body as he pressed himself closer, his hands sliding down to her hips, gripping the silk of her gown. The neon light danced across her skin, highlighting the curve of her collarbone, the flush of her cheeks. Her fingers dug into his shoulders, pulling him tighter, her body arching into his as the saxophone's wail pulsed through the walls, its rhythm matching the frantic beat of their hearts. His mouth moved to her neck, his teeth grazing her pulse, and a soft moan escaped her lips, the sound swallowed by the music. For a moment, the world, Lillian, the gala, the whispers burned away, leaving only the fire of his touch, the desperate need to be closer to claim this moment as theirs. But when they pulled apart panting, her eyes were stormy, her lips tingling. This doesn't fix it, she said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. Kissing me doesn't make your world accept me. Grayson's face fell, his hands still on her hips, his breath ragged. I don't need them to accept you, I need you. She stepped back, the neon light casting shadows across her face, her gown shimmering like blood against the dark. Maybe that's not enough, she said, her voice breaking. Not if I lose myself. He reached for her, but she turned her heels, echoing in the hallway as she walked away. the saxophone's mournful notes trailing behind her. Grayson stood there, the weight of her words sinking in the heat of her kiss still burning on his lips. He'd thought love could conquer anything. But now, in the heart of Chicago's South Side, he wasn't so sure. Beale Street hummed under the Memphis night, its neon signs blazing with promises of blues and bourbon, the air thick with the smoky scent of BBQ ribs, and the wail of a guitar spilling from open club doors. The Mississippi River glittered nearby its dark waters, catching the flicker of streetlights, while the laughter of locals and tourists mingled with the clink of glasses. Memphis was a city of soul, its heartbeat rooted in music and memory, and for Jasmine Carter, it was a homecoming, a chance to find herself again after Chicago's bruising clash. She stood outside Club Indigo, a legendary blues joint where her grandmother Ruth had once owned the stage. Jasmine's navy dress hugged her curves, her curls loose and catching the neon glow, but her brown eyes were shadowed heavy with the doubts that had followed her from the gala, Lillian Harper's venomous words. Grayson tends to tire of his diversions, still stung, as did the whispers of his world calling her an outsider, a novelty. Darius Brooks' warning echoed too. Don't let his world swallow you. She'd come to Memphis for Ruth's tribute concert, a celebration of the blues legend's career, but she was also here to answer a deeper question. Could she love Grayson Cole without losing who she was? Inside Club. Indigo was a time capsule, wooden floors scuffed from decades of dancing walls lined with black and white photos of Ruth and her contemporaries. The air alive with the scent of whiskey and fried okra. Ruth Washington, 70, stood on stage. Her silver hair braided her voice, a smoky velvet that hushed the crowd. "This one's for the broken hearts," she said, launching into a rendition of Stormy Weather, her notes raw and haunting. Jasmine sat at a corner table, her fingers tracing the rim of a bourbon glass, her heart aching as the music stirred memories of Oakland, of her roots, of the woman she'd always been. Ruth's eyes found hers from the stage, and a knowing smile crossed her face. After the set, she joined Jasmine, her presence warm and commanding, her floral shawl trailing like a queen's cape. "You look like you're carrying the world, baby," Ruth said, her voice low, cutting through the club's chatter. Jasmine sighed, her shoulders slumping. Chicago was a lot. Grand Grayson's world. It's not mine. They look at me like I don't belong, and I'm starting to wonder if they're right. Ruth's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "You belong anywhere you choose, Jasmine, but love ain't easy, especially when it crosses lines. Back in '68, I loved a man, a white guitarist. Tommy Lee. We sang together, loved together, but the world wasn't kind. Folks called me names, said I was chasing something I couldn't have. I walked away thinking it'd save me. Biggest regret of my life." Jasmine's throat tightened, Ruth's story hitting too close to home. "How do you know if it's worth fighting for?" Ruth leaned closer, her hand squeezing Jasmine's. "When it makes you stronger, not smaller. You're my granddaughter, Jazz. Ain't no world big enough to dim your light." The words lingered as the club filled with applause for the next act, but Jasmine's mind was a storm. She wanted Grayson, his touch, his laugh, the way he saw her. But Chicago had shown her the cost. Could she hold on to herself in his glittering, judgmental world? Grayson Cole wasn't supposed to be in Memphis. He was meant to be in Boston, buried in board meetings, steering Apex Innovations through a high-stakes merger. But the memory of Jasmine walking away in that Chicago hallway, her red gown shimmering under neon, her words cutting deep. Maybe that's not enough, had haunted him. He'd replayed their kiss 1,000 times, the heat of her lips, the way her body arched into his, the saxophone weaving through their breaths. He couldn't let her go, not without a fight. He'd tracked her to Club Indigo, a reckless move for a man who planned every step of his life. The Memphis night was warm, the air heavy with river mist, and as he stepped into the club, the blues hit him like a physical force. He spotted Jasmine at her table, Ruth beside her, and his chest tightened. She was breathtaking, her navy dress catching the stage lights, her curls framing her face like a halo, but her eyes were distant, and he knew he was part of the reason. Ruth saw him first, her gaze sharp, but not unkind. "Well, look who's a long way from Boston," she said, her voice carrying over the music as Grayson approached. Jasmine's head snapped up, her eyes widening. "Grayson, what are you doing here?" He shifted his tailored jacket out of place among the club's denim and leather. "I needed to see you," he said, his voice low, raw. "I messed up in Chicago. I should have shut Lillian down, should have made it clear you're not just with me, you're everything." Her lips parted, but doubt flickered in her gaze. "Words are easy, Grayson. Your world made it clear I don't fit." "Then I'll change my world," he said, his voice fierce, drawing a curious glance from Ruth. "I don't care about their rules. I care about you." Ruth raised an eyebrow, her smile sly. "Big talk, young man. Let's see if you can back it up." She stood patting Jasmine's shoulder. "I'll leave you all to it. Don't break my girl's heart, Mr. Cole." As Ruth returned to the stage, the club's energy shifted, a new band launching into a gritty blues riff. Jasmine studied Grayson, her fingers tightening around her glass. "You can't just show up and say things like that. I'm not sure I can do this. Us if it means fighting every day to prove I'm enough." "You're more than enough," he said, sitting across from her, his knee brushing hers under the table, the contact sending a spark through them both. "I'm the one who needs to prove it." The night took an unexpected turn when Darius Brooks arrived fresh from a Chicago art show, his locks loose, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder. He'd heard about Jasmine's trip through a mutual friend and showed up to support Ruth's tribute. Spotting Grayson, his easy grin faded, replaced by a protective edge. "This the tech guy?" he asked, his voice cool as he slid into a chair. Jasmine tensed, sensing the storm brewing. "Darius, this is Grayson." "Grayson Darius, old friend from Oakland." Grayson extended a hand, his jaw tight. "Good to meet you." Darius shook it, but his grip was firm, his eyes assessing. "Heard a lot about you, man. Hope you're not playing games with my girl." "Darius." Jasmine warned, her voice sharp, but Grayson held Darius's gaze unflinching. "I'm not playing," he said, his tone steady. "She's worth more than that." The tension crackled, but the band saved them, calling for a jam session. Darius, a regular at Indigo, grabbed a harmonica and joined in his notes, weaving through the guitar's wail. Ruth, ever the instigator, beckoned Grayson to the stage. "Let's see what Boston's got." "Mr. Cole," Jasmine's eyes widened, a laugh escaping her. "Grayson, you don't have to." But he stood, loosening his tie, a reckless glint in his green eyes. "When in Memphis," he said, shooting her a grin that made her heart skip. He took the stage, fumbling through a blues riff on a borrowed guitar, his chords clumsy but earnest. The crowd cheered more for his effort than his skill, and Jasmine found herself smiling, the weight in her chest lifting just a fraction. After the set, Ruth invited them to her home, a cozy shotgun house on the edge of Memphis, its porch strung with fairy lights, the air sweet with magnolia and leftover BBQ smoke. The backyard was a haven, crickets chirping a fire pit, crackling the faint hum of blues drifting from a neighbor's radio. Darius excused himself to catch up with old friends, leaving Jasmine and Grayson alone under the stars. They sat on a wooden bench, the firelight dancing across Jasmine's face, her navy dress shimmering softly. Grayson reached for her hand, his fingers tracing her knuckles, the touch, tentative but warm. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "I'll fight for this, for us, but I need to know you're in." She looked at him, her heart a tangle of hope and fear. "I want to be," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared." Grayson. Scared. I'll lose myself trying to be what your world wants. Then we'll make our own world, he said, his voice fierce, and before she could respond, he pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was both tender and desperate. The firelight cast golden shadows across their skin, the crackle of the flames mingling with the soft hum of the radio, a slow blues tune that seemed to pulse with their rhythm. His hand slid to her waist, pulling her onto his lap, her dress riding up slightly as she straddled him. Her fingers threaded through his hair, tugging gently, and a low groan escaped his throat as her lips moved to his jaw, her breath hot against his skin. The magnolia scent wrapped around them sweet and heady, and the warmth of the fire mirrored the heat building between them. His hands roamed her back, tracing the curve of her spine, and she arched into him. Her body soft and strong, every touch, a promise, every kiss, a plea. The world. Chicago. Lillian. The doubts faded, leaving only the fire of their connection, the urgent need to hold on. When they pulled apart breathless, her forehead rested against his, her eyes glistening. "This doesn't mean I'm saying yes," she said, her voice husky, a smile tugging at her lips. "But it's a start." He grinned, his hands still on her hips, the firelight catching the hope in his eyes. "I'll take it." The next morning, as Jasmine packed to return to Oakland, Ruth pulled her aside, her eyes sharp but warm. "That boy's trying. Jazz. Ain't perfect, but he's trying. Question is, what do you want?" Jasmine glanced at her phone where a text from Grayson waited. "Found out Apex funded a clinic in Oakland last month, inspired by you. Call me." Her heart skipped the news, a quiet revelation. He hadn't told her, hadn't used it to win her over. Maybe, just maybe, he was learning. But as she boarded her flight, the weight of Chicago lingered, and Darius's warning echoed. Don't let his world swallow you. Memphis had given her clarity, but the fight was far from over. She needed to know if Grayson's promises could hold, or if love would demand a price she couldn't pay. Boston's Back Bay shimmered under a late autumn dusk, its brownstone facades glowing in the fading light, the Charles River reflecting the city's golden hues. The air carried the briny tang of the harbor, laced with the crisp bite of falling leaves and the distant clang of trolley cars. In the heart of the tech district, glass towers loomed their sleek lines, a testament to ambition. But the wind off the water whispered of older, harder truths. For Jasmine, Carter, stepping into this world, felt like crossing a battle line, and the weight of it pressed against her chest. She adjusted the strap of her emerald blazer, her curls pinned neatly, her brown eyes guarded as she entered the MIT Conference Center for Apex Innovation's annual Tech Summit. Grayson Cole had invited her, his voice earnest, over the phone after Memphis come to Boston. "Jasmine, let me show you I'm trying." She'd agreed, spurred by the revelation of his quiet funding for an Oakland clinic, a gesture that spoke louder than his promises. But Chicago's wounds lingered, Lillian Harper's venom, the gala's whispers, and Memphis had only sharpened her question. Could she love Grayson without surrendering herself? The summit was a whirlwind of innovation, holographic displays, AI demos, the hum of venture capitalists sealing deals over artisanal coffee. Grayson moved through it like a king, his tailored navy suit accentuating his broad shoulders, his green eyes sharp as he delivered a keynote on ethical AI. But when he spotted Jasmine in the crowd, his smile softened, a private warmth that made her heart skip, despite her resolve to stay cautious. He joined her during a break, his hand brushing hers, the contact a spark in the sterile air. "You made it," he said, his voice low, a mix of relief and hope. "What do you think?" She glanced at the buzzing hall, the sea of suits and tech jargon. "It's a lot. Your world's bigger than I imagined." "It's just noise," he said, stepping closer. the scent of his cedar cologne cutting through the room's sterile chill. "You're the signal." Her lips twitched, but before she could respond, a voice cut through Grayson. "Darling, you're neglecting your guests." Lillian Harper sauntered over, her platinum hair sleek, her black dress a calculated statement. Her blue eyes flicked to Jasmine, sharp and dismissive. "And you brought your community outreach project." Jasmine's jaw tightened, her voice ice. "Jasmine Carter. And I'm here for Grayson, not your approval." Lillian's smile was a razor. "Charming. But this world," she gestured to the hall, "it's not Oakland. You'll find that out soon enough." Grayson's hand tensed on Jasmine's arm, his voice a low growl. "Walk away, Lillian." She did, but not before her parting shot. "Enjoy the fairy tale. Ms. Carter." They always end. The encounter was just the beginning. As the summit continued, Jasmine felt the weight of sidelong glances, overheard murmurs, Grayson's latest fling, a diversity stunt, and a particularly stinging moment when a venture capitalist asked if she was representing Apex's urban outreach. Her smile stayed in place, but inside she was unraveling each word, a reminder of Chicago, of the fight to belong in a world that saw her as less. Desperate for clarity, Jasmine slipped away to Roxbury, Boston's historic black neighborhood, where she volunteered at a community health clinic. The familiar rhythm of taking vitals, joking with patients, and smelling fried plantains from a nearby food truck grounded her. Here she was, Jasmine Carter, nurse, not Grayson's accessory. But even as she bandaged a child's scraped knee, her mind churned. Grayson's world was a battlefield, and every step felt like a surrender of the woman Ruth had raised her to be. Meanwhile, Grayson was spiraling. The summit's success meant nothing when Jasmine's silence grew heavier each day. He sought out Dr. Maria Torres, a former MIT professor and Apex advisor at her office, overlooking the Charles Maria 52, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened as he poured out his frustration. "She's pulling away," he said, pacing his tie loosened. "I thought bringing her here would show her I'm serious, but it's like I'm losing her." Maria leaned back, her voice calm but cutting. "You brought her to your world, Grayson. Did you ask what she needs? Or are you still trying to control the narrative, like one of your algorithms?" He stopped her words, a gut punch. "I love her, Maria. I'd do anything." "Then stop trying to fix it with grand gestures," she said. "Listen to her. Live in her world for a change, not just yours." The advice rattled him, forcing him to confront his instinct to solve problems with power and charm. He thought of Jasmine's laugh in Memphis, her strength in Oakland, the way her touch set him ablaze. He couldn't lose her. But Maria was right. He needed to learn, not lead. That evening, Grayson found Jasmine at a cozy South End cafe, its brick walls warmed by candlelight, the air rich with the scent of espresso and cinnamon. She sat by a window, the Charles River glinting outside her face, a mix of resolve and exhaustion. He slid into the seat across from her, his heart pounding, his usual confidence. Nowhere to be found. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice raw. "For Chicago. For today. For not seeing how hard this is for you. I want us, Jasmine. But I don't know how to do this right." She looked at him, her brown eyes searching her fingers, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "It's not just about you, Grayson. It's your world, the looks, the whispers, the way they make me feel like I'm not enough. I can't keep fighting to prove I belong." "Then don't," he said, leaning forward, his hand reaching for hers. "Let me fight with you. Let me learn what you need, what we need." Her breath hitched, his words stirring the hope she'd buried, but doubt clung to her, fed by Lillian's taunts, by the summit's judgment. "I need time," she said, her voice breaking. I need to know who I am without all this. Grayson's face fell, but he nodded, his hand tightening around hers. I'll wait, he said, his voice thick, as long as it takes. The cafe's candlelight flickered, casting shadows across their faces, and the weight of their words hung heavy. Jasmine stood, her blazer slipping off one shoulder, and Grayson followed, unable to let her go without one last try. He pulled her close, his lips crashing into hers in a kiss that was all pain and longing, a desperate plea to hold on. The river's reflection danced through the window, its golden light bathing their skin, the soft jazz from the cafe's speakers weaving through their ragged breaths. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks, and she melted into him, her fingers gripping his shirt, her body pressing against his. The kiss deepened her lips, parting a soft moan escaping as his hands slid to her waist, pulling her closer until there was no space left. The cinnamon scent of the cafe, mixed with his cedar cologne and the warmth of his touch, was a fire against the autumn chill. For a moment they were back in Oakland and Memphis, where the world couldn't touch them, but only for a moment. When they pulled apart, her eyes were wet, her lips swollen, and the pain in her gaze cut him deeper than any boardroom loss. I'm sorry, she whispered, stepping back, the river's light catching the tears on her cheeks. I need to do this for me. She walked away, her heels clicking against the hardwood, leaving Grayson standing in the cafe, the jazz now a mournful dirge. He watched her disappear into the Boston night, the weight of her absence crushing, and for the first time he understood what Maria meant. Love wasn't about winning, it was about letting go, about learning to meet her where she stood. Back in Roxbury, Jasmine threw herself into the clinic, her hands steady as she stitched a wound, her voice calm as she reassured a nervous patient, but her heart was a storm, torn between Grayson's plea and her need to protect herself. A text from Darius arrived, blunt as ever. You good, Jazz. Don't let Boston break you. She smiled faintly, but the question lingered. Could she find a way back to Grayson without losing the woman she'd fought to become? Meanwhile, Grayson returned to his penthouse, the city's skyline glittering below, cold and distant. Lillian's latest move, a leaked article calling Jasmine a gold digger in a tech blog, burned in his inbox. But he ignored it. Maria's words echoed, live in her world. He didn't know how yet, but he'd figure it out. He had to, because a life without Jasmine wasn't a life at all. Savannah's historic district glowed under a canopy of ancient oaks, their Spanish moss swaying in the warm evening breeze, the air thick with the sweet scent of magnolia and the faint chime of church bells. Cobblestone streets wound past pastel townhouses, their wrought iron balconies catching the golden light of gas lamps while the Savannah River murmured nearby, its ripples reflecting the stars. This was a city of old souls and new beginnings, and for Jasmine Carter it was a crossroads, a place to decide if love could bridge the chasm she'd felt in Boston. She stood outside the Forsyth Park Community Center, her teal dress shimmering softly, her curls loose and catching the twilight glow. Her heart was a tangle of hope and fear, stirred by a text from Grayson Cole 2 days ago. I'm trying to be better. Come to Savannah, please. She'd left Boston seeking herself, finding solace in Roxbury's clinic, but Ruth's words in Memphis echoed. When it makes you stronger, not smaller. Grayson's quiet funding of an Oakland clinic revealed in Memphis had planted a seed of trust, but Chicago and Boston had left scars. Could he truly meet her in her world, or was she chasing a dream? Inside the center buzzed with locals, activists, and healthcare workers gathered for the launch of the Apex Health Equity Foundation, a $100 million initiative to support underserved communities inspired by Jasmine's work. Grayson had poured himself into it, driven by Dr. Maria Torres's advice. Live in her world. He'd spent weeks in Savannah meeting with community leaders, visiting clinics, learning the realities Jasmine faced daily. Tonight was his chance to prove it, not just to her, but to himself. Jasmine slipped into the back of the room, her presence unnoticed as Grayson took the stage. His charcoal suit was tailored but understated, his green eyes bright with a fire she hadn't seen before. "This foundation isn't about charity," he said, his voice steady, commanding. "It's about justice, about ensuring every community has access to the care they deserve." I didn't always see that, but someone showed me. His gaze swept the room, landing on Jasmine, and her breath caught. She taught me that true strength isn't in power or wealth, it's in showing up, listening, and fighting for what's right. The crowd applauded, but Jasmine's heart pounded his words, piercing the wall she'd built. He hadn't named her, hadn't made it a spectacle. But the truth was clear, he was changing not for her, but because of her. As he stepped off the stage, their eyes locked, and the room seemed to fade, leaving only the pull between them. Grayson found her outside under a massive oak, its branches heavy with moss, the air alive with crickets and the distant hum of a street busker's banjo. He approached slowly, his hands in his pockets, his face a mix of hope and vulnerability. "You came," he said, his voice low, almost disbelieving. She nodded, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. I had to see it for myself. The foundation. "It's real, Grayson. It's more than I expected. It's just a start," he said, stepping closer, the magnolia scent mingling with his cedar cologne. "I was wrong, Jasmine. In Chicago and Boston, I thought I could pull you into my world without understanding yours. I'm learning slowly, but I'm learning." Her eyes searched his, the sincerity in his voice tugging at her resolve. "Learning's not enough if it doesn't last. Your world, Lillian," the whispers, "it's still there." He flinched, but his gaze didn't waver. "Lillian's out of Apex. I cut ties after her stunt in Boston. And the whispers, they'll always exist. But I choose you, Jasmine. Every time." Her throat tightened, the weight of his words colliding with the doubts she'd carried. She thought of Ruth's story of Tommy Lee, of love lost to fear. She didn't want that regret, but trust was a fragile thing, and she needed more than promises. Before she could speak, Darius Brooks appeared, his locks tied back, his leather jacket slung over one shoulder. He'd come to Savannah for an art festival, but his protective streak flared at the sight of Grayson. "You still here, tech guy?" he said, his voice cool, his eyes narrowing. "Jazz, you sure about this one?" Grayson tensed, but Jasmine raised a hand, her voice firm. "I've got this, Darius. Go enjoy your festival." Darius hesitated, then nodded, shooting Grayson a final look. "Don't mess this up, man." He walked off, leaving them under the oak, the tension lingering like the river's mist. Jasmine turned to Grayson, her voice softer now. "He's just looking out for me, but I need to know Grayson. Can you live in my world? Not just visit it. I'm trying," he said, his voice raw. "I've been to clinics, talked to nurses, seen what you see. It's not enough yet, but I'm not stopping. I want us, Jasmine, a world where we both belong." The honesty in his eyes broke something in her, and she stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest, feeling the steady thud of his heart. "Show me," she whispered. "Show me you mean it." He led her to a historic hotel overlooking the Savannah River, its balcony draped in ivy, the air warm with the scent of jasmine blooms and river water. The room was elegant but simple, with tall windows letting in the silver glow of a rising moon. The distant banjo now joined by the soft lap of waves against the riverbank. Grayson closed the door behind them, his eyes never leaving hers, and the world outside fell away. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice thick, stepping closer until the space between them hummed with electricity. "For every time I made you feel less than you are. You're everything, Jasmine." Her breath hitched and she reached for him, her fingers curling into his jacket as she pulled him close. The kiss was a firestorm, All the pent-up longing of Boston and Memphis unleashed, his lips claiming hers with a hunger that made her knees weak. The moonlight spilled across their skin, highlighting the curve of her neck, the flush of her cheeks. His hands slid to her hips, pulling her against him. The teal dress, a soft barrier between their bodies. Her fingers tangled in his hair, tugging gently, and a low groan rumbled in his throat as she deepened the kiss, her tongue teasing his, the taste of mint and desire dizzying. The river's rhythm pulsed through the open window, a counterpoint to their ragged breaths, and his hands roamed her back, tracing the zipper of her dress, pausing as if asking permission. She arched into him, her body answering, and the heat of his touch was a flame burning away. The doubts, the fears, the distance. They moved together, a dance of need and trust. Every kiss, a vow, every touch, a bridge across their worlds. When they pulled apart, breathless, her forehead rested against his, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "This doesn't mean it's fixed," she said, her voice husky, a smile breaking through. "But it's a damn good start." He laughed, the sound rough, and relieved, his hand still on her hips, the moonlight catching the hope in his eyes. "I'll take it, Jasmine. I'll take anything you give me." The next morning, Vivian Cole arrived in Savannah, her recovery a quiet miracle, her presence a bridge between their worlds. Over breakfast at a riverfront cafe, she took Jasmine's hand, her voice warm. "I see the way my son looks at you," she said. "He's never been this alive. Whatever you're building, it's worth it." Jasmine smiled, but Lillian's shadow lingered. A new article planted by Lillian's allies surfaced in a tech gossip rag, questioning Grayson's distraction with a nurse from nowhere. Grayson dismissed it, his focus on the foundation, but Jasmine felt the sting. She met Ruth's eyes over a video call, her grandmother's voice steady. "You're stronger than their noise, baby. Decide what you want." As she walked, Savannah's streets, the oaks whispering above, Jasmine knew the truth. She wanted Grayson, not his world, but the man who'd stood on a Memphis stage, who'd built a foundation for her people, who'd kissed her like she was his heir. But love was a risk, and the road ahead was uncertain. Grayson, meanwhile, was planning his next move. Maria's words, "Live in her world," had taken root, and he was ready to prove it. Not with money or power, but with action. He didn't know if Jasmine would stay, but he'd fight for her even if it meant rewriting his entire life. Big Sur's rugged coastline stretched before the Pacific, its cliffs jagged and wild, the air alive with the crash of waves and the sharp scent of pine. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, the horizon a promise of something vast and uncharted. Jasmine Carter stood on a rocky outcrop, her white sundress fluttering in the breeze, her curls catching the fading light. Her brown eyes traced the ocean, her heart full yet restless, the weight of the past months. Oakland's moonlit kiss, Chicago's bitter whispers, Memphis's soul, Boston's breaking point, Savannah's redemption. Settling into a quiet clarity, Grayson Cole had brought her here a week after Savannah. His voice soft but certain. "Just us. No noise. Let me show you what we can be." She'd agreed, drawn by the man who'd stood under Savannah's oaks, who'd built a foundation for her people, who'd learned to live in her world. But love was a leap, and even now, with the Pacific roaring below, she felt the edge of it, the risk of falling. Grayson joined her, his linen shirt open at the collar, his green eyes reflecting the sunset. He'd left his phone behind, a first in years, his focus entirely on her. "You okay?" he asked, his hand brushing hers, the touch warm and steady. She nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "This place, it's like nothing else. wild but peaceful. Like us, he said, his voice low, a tease and a truth. Wild when we need to be peaceful when we get it right. She laughed, the sound bright against the waves, but her eyes were serious. We've been through a lot. Grayson, Chicago, Boston. I wasn't sure we'd make it. He turned to face her, his hand cupping her cheek, his thumb tracing her jaw. I wasn't either, but every fight, every moment you called me out made me better. You made me better. Jasmine. Her throat tightened, his words stirring the hope she'd guarded so fiercely. She thought of Ruth's story in Memphis, of love lost to fear, and knew she didn't want that ending. You made me stronger too, she said, her voice soft. But I need to know. This is real, not just a moment, but a life. He nodded his eyes, never leaving hers, and reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Her breath caught as he knelt, the ocean's roar a symphony behind him. The ring was simple, a single sapphire set in a silver band, its deep blue echoing the Pacific, a nod to the soul music she loved. I don't want a world without you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I want to build one with you, our rules, our way, Jasmine. Carter, will you marry me? Tears welled in her eyes, the sunset blurring into a golden haze. She saw the man who'd fumbled on a Memphis stage, who'd faced Darius's challenge, who'd stood in Savannah and chosen her over his empire. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, Grayson. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling, and stood, pulling her into a kiss that was all joy and promise. The waves crashed below, the pine scent wrapping around them, and her arms wound around his neck. Her body pressed to his, the warmth of his embrace, a home she'd never known she needed. The kiss was soft but deep, a seal on their vow, and when they pulled apart, her laughter mingled with his, the sound brighter than the sunset. The wedding was no grand affair, but a soulful celebration in an Oakland church, its stained glass windows glowing with afternoon light, the air rich with the scent of gardenias and fried chicken from the reception. To follow, Ruth sang. At last, her voice a velvet prayer that brought tears to every eye, while Vivian, radiant in her recovery, beamed from the front row. Darius, grudgingly impressed by Grayson's growth, gave a toast that had the crowd laughing. Never thought I'd say this, but tech guy's all right, Jazz. You picked a good one. Jasmine, in a cream gown that hugged her curves, her curls adorned with tiny pearls, felt like herself. Oakland strong, Memphis soulful, Savannah hopeful. Grayson, in a simple navy suit, couldn't stop smiling, his hand never leaving hers. The ceremony was small, a mix of her hospital colleagues, his Apex team and their families, a bridge between their worlds. Ruth's speech sealed it, her voice steady. Love ain't easy, but it's worth it when it's real. These two built something new, and that's what makes it last. After the vows, they danced under string lights in the church courtyard, the Bay Area, breeze cool against their skin. Aretha Franklin's voice floating from a speaker. Grayson pulled Jasmine close, his lips brushing her ear. We did it, he murmured, his voice thick. Our world. She smiled, her cheek against his. Ours. Their honeymoon wasn't a luxury resort, but a 2-week volunteer stint at a rural clinic in Guatemala, a choice that felt right for them both. The highlands were stark and beautiful, the air sharp with the scent of volcanic earth and coffee beans, the night sky ablaze with stars. Jasmine worked with the nursing staff, her hands steady as she treated children, her Spanish rusty but warm. Grayson, far from his boardroom, helped install solar-powered medical equipment. His shirt sleeves rolled up his laughter, easy as he bonded with local technicians. One night, under a blanket of stars, they sat outside their simple cabin. The chirp of crickets, a soft lullaby. Grayson wrapped an arm around her, the warmth of his body, a contrast to the cool mountain air. "You ever think about how we got here?" he asked, his voice low. "If my mom hadn't gotten sick, if you hadn't been her nurse." She leaned into him, her hand resting on his chest. "I think we'd have found each other anyway. Some things are meant to be." He kissed her forehead, his lips lingering. "You're my meant-to-be, Jasmine." She smiled, the stars reflecting in her eyes, and knew he was right. They'd built something new. Not his world, not hers, but theirs, forged in the fire of Oakland, Chicago, Memphis, Boston, Savannah, and now Guatemala. Back in Oakland, the Apex Health Equity Foundation grew, opening its third clinic with Jasmine appointed to lead a nursing education program while continuing her part-time shifts. Grayson restructured his schedule, leaving Apex's daily grind to his COO, prioritizing time with Jasmine and the foundation. Lillian's whispers faded. Her influence diminished, and the tech world moved on to new gossip. But the stares still came, sometimes curious, judging, and Jasmine met them with a smile, her sapphire ring catching the light, her strength unshaken. Ruth, watching them at a family barbecue, pulled Jasmine aside, her eyes gleaming. "You did good, baby. You built a love." "That's true." Jasmine hugged her, the smell of cornbread and magnolia wrapping around them. "Couldn't have done it without you." Grand Grayson joined them, a plate of ribs in hand, his grin boyish. "Am I passing the test, Ms. Ruth?" She laughed, her voice warm. "You're getting there, son. Keep loving my girl, right?" He wrapped an arm around Jasmine, his eyes soft. "Always." Their story wasn't perfect. The world still judged, still whispered, but they'd learned to tune it out. They'd built a life where a tech titan could learn to listen, where a nurse could lead without losing herself, where love was a choice to grow together. Oakland's moon had sparked it. Savannah's oaks had sealed it, and Guatemala's stars had lit the way. If this story of love's triumph touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and share a moment when you dared to cross a divide for love. Join us for more stories of passion and redemption, and let's build a world where love knows no boundaries. Tell us in the comments, what's your story of a love worth fighting for?